Welcome to the Spot On Insurance Podcast, sponsored by Insurance Licensing Services of America, ILSA. This is Ted Tavares.
And this is Arlene Tavares.
Before we get started, remember to click on the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode.
Hello and welcome to Spot On Insurance. This is your host, Doug Foresta. I want to remind you before we begin that if you have not subscribed to the podcast, please go to iTunes and subscribe so you won't miss any of our wonderful episodes. My guest today is Eddy DeMelo. He is a digital marketer, and we are going to be discussing SEO and how to connect with your ideal prospects. Eddy DeMelo, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. And I should mention that you are the co-founder of Agency Appeal, and you work with insurance companies. You help them build brands that both their customers and search engines can relate to. So let's talk about this idea of SEO. I know that, first of all, maybe you can describe for people who are not familiar or might have just heard the term, what is SEO?
Sure. So SEO stands for search engine optimization. And when a lot of people hear the phrase search engine optimization, the first thing they think of is, how do I get to page one of Google, right? Like I want to be a top listing when somebody searches for an agent in my area. And that's sort of that's one of the goals, and that's sort of the end result. The whole sort of methodology and the whole reason for going down this optimization process is really to create a website that both users and the search engines find useful and accessible. The sort of the crux of the message here is build and develop and optimize for your users first, because really the search engines care about the same things that your users care about. And so if you do everything with your users in mind, everything from, the design and the layout to how quickly your site loads, if you do everything with your users in mind first, the SEO benefits will follow.
I remember years ago, people used to just cram a bunch of keywords into their websites to the point where, it didn't make any sense. You just read this thing and it was just a bunch of keywords. Is that still kind of the best thinking about search engine optimization?
Thankfully, no.
Right.
So there's still a keyword component, right? Like if you're an agency in Massachusetts and you want to write auto insurance, somewhere on your site, you have to have content that talks about Massachusetts auto insurance policies. Otherwise, there's no way for the search engines to make that connection. But at the same token, if you don't mention those phrases, there's really no way for the consumer to make that connection either, right?
Right.
So the biggest shift in a keyword perspective is that thankfully the search engines have become smarter, right? They understand sort of the semantic nature of language. They understand synonyms and they understand different phrases. And so if we're optimizing for a particular line of insurance, you don't have to use phrases like, for the best Massachusetts auto insurance quote, call your Massachusetts auto insurance agency at this Massachusetts phone number. You can write much
right.
more naturally.
That's what I remember, yes.
And sort of focus on keyword families is what we tell people to focus on, keyword families. So groupings of keywords that relate to the topic that you're trying to rank for.
How would I find out what those keyword families are?
So there are a number of tools out there. You could use the Keyword Planner tool from Google. That's one of the most probably well-known and one of the most easily accessible. And what that'll do is if you're not currently running a paid AdWords campaign, you'll get data that's sort of bucketed in ranges. So instead of them telling you, hey, 2,000 people a month search for the phrase Massachusetts auto insurance, they might give you a range. They'll say, somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 people a month search for this phrase. What you want to keep in mind is that don't just focus on the individual keyword, right? So if you want to rank for Massachusetts auto insurance, the phrases that you should be using, certainly you can use Massachusetts auto insurance. You can use car insurance in Massachusetts, auto insurance rates in Massachusetts. Like you can sort of mix it up. The target keyword for most insurance agents is going to be, at least for their product pages or their sort of product-driven landing pages, are going to be, some variation of where they're located and whatever that product is that they're trying to sell. And then sort of however you can combine that in any order to make it sound natural when you're writing it, you're going to be in pretty decent shape.
I know you said that one of the things you said is that at a high level, search engines only really care about three things. Can you explain what those three things are?
More often than not, people, when I'm either dealing with a brand new customer or somebody will have heard something, they'll read something on a blog and they'll come to me and they'll say, "Hey, what's the magic bullet? What's the secret sauce? What's the one thing that I can do to try and outsmart and trick Google?" And the advice I typically give them is, stop trying to do that. Stop trying to outsmart Google. You're not going to do it. So instead, focus on the three things that in my entire career have never changed. I've always seen them in some capacity be a core element to organic search success. And those three things are accessibility, quality of content, and trust signals. So when we talk about accessibility, what does that mean? Well, from a user perspective, we want to make sure that your site's easy to navigate, right? So you've got clear navigation calls. They get to your homepage and they know exactly where to go from there. It loads quickly, right? So not waiting around for images to download and they're not seeing sort of like the little spinning wheels of death. There's no errors, so they're not getting page not found errors and redirect errors and things like that. It's a really good user experience. Those are the same thing the search engines care about. As far as quality of content goes, there was this stance a while back where the websites with the most pages sort of wins, right? And so back to our keyword discussion.
Cram it all in.
Right. You'd have a page dedicated to the phrase Massachusetts auto insurance, and then another page dedicated to Massachusetts car insurance. Everything about them is the same, except you're replacing auto insurance with car insurance. Because the thought was, well, now I have double the content. That's no longer the case. I'd much rather see a website with 10 really great, informative, valuable pages than 100 just sort of garbage pages that are really thin and short on real value. It's a better experience for the users. They actually get the information they want and they get to read something that is enjoyable to read. And that's exactly what the search engines care about. They want to look at the pages on your site and have a good understanding that, this is a solid resource for their users. And then as far as trust signals go, it's all about sort of proving that people are interested in your content and that they trust you as a business. So things like reviews on your Google profiles, on your Yelp profiles, backlinks. So a link to your website from another website is important. That sort of shows Google that people trust you online. Social media shares, things like that. These are all signals to the search engines that people are interacting and engaging with your business. And typically when that happens, there's a level of trust that's involved.
When you talked about the quality of content, one of the things I was thinking about is, again, I think about the old days. You had, it's like you had a website. It was kind of a static brochure and it sat there. So if I'm trying to get noticed by the search engine, would it be fair to say I'm going to have to create some type of ongoing content?
Yeah. So an ongoing content strategy is key. One of the things that you want to avoid is sort of letting your website become stale and stagnant. So certainly, we don't expect the local insurance agent to be adding new product pages every single day, right? So that's where a blog comes in. And the great thing about a blog is, we encourage our agents to write about more than just insurance. Write about things that your target audience, your demographic cares about, and find a way to tie it back to insurance when you can. But, for example, it's starting to get a little bit colder here in New England. People are going to be firing up their fireplaces, their fire pits, all that good stuff. So posts on fire safety, huge. And there's an obvious tie in there to home insurance, but that allows you to target some more long tail keywords as well, right? So fireplace safety tips, how to safely use a fire pit, things like that, where they're not entirely related to insurance, but they get people sort of, they're phrases that allow you to fill sort of that top of the funnel sales approach, right? Where you're just getting people introduced to you, your agency, your brand, and to become comfortable with you. And as an insurance needs arise, the more comfortable they are with you, the more likely they are to go to you from the next guy.
Right. Because they're getting such great information from you. And
exactly.
How about,
the goal is to just become an information resource.
And how about, you talked about getting those backlinks, or shares on social media. How do I do that? How do I encourage people to share my website links?
One of the best things you can do is to sort of be your own sort of best advocate, right? So anytime you publish a blog post, make sure you're pumping it out to the correct channels, right? So if I'm writing a blog post about that the intended audience are, home and auto customers, I'm going to use things like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. But if I'm targeting a commercial account, I'm going to pump that out over LinkedIn, right? And both platforms allow to have their own sort of advertising platforms built in, so you can boost a post and make sure that you're targeting your demographic correctly. So if you've got a blog post that's tied into home insurance in some way, and you know that your ideal customer has, a home value above a certain amount and typically has a certain level of education and lives in a radius of a specific zip code, you can boost these posts relatively inexpensively with those exact demographics. And with the idea being, if your topic is and your content is good enough and engaging enough, as people read this, they're going to want to share it on their own posts too. So not only are you getting the traction of getting in front of these people, but if they're sharing it now with their audiences by posting it on their own Facebook walls and sharing the post directly from the post that you boosted, now you've got even more exposure.
Spot on Insurance is sponsored by ILSA, Insurance Licensing Services of America, America's premier licensing and regulatory compliance experts. To learn more about ILSA and the services they provide, visit ilsainc.com. I wanted to also discuss this idea that you said about that there's been a shift in messaging. And can you talk about this shift in messaging that's happening?
Yeah, so there's a shift in messaging in that innately as humans, right, we all sort of want to be the hero, right? So when you watch a movie like Star Wars, who do you want to be? You want to be Luke Skywalker, right?
Right.
The reality of the situation is your customer also wants to be Luke Skywalker. So if you're portraying yourself as Skywalker and your customer wants to be Skywalker, like, oh, that's great. They're just like me. On to the next guy. But if you position yourself as the Yoda, you're the guide, right? So now you're able to point them in the right direction. They still get to remain the hero. And you've done your job by providing them with the information or the service that they need to become that hero. So in the insurance space, a perfect example would be, somebody comes to your website because they know they need life insurance. They want to be the hero. They want to be the one who's doing the right thing and protecting their family, right? So that's sort of their sort of hero status, their superpower, so to speak. They don't need somebody else to be the superhero or have that superpower. They need somebody who can guide them in the right direction, who can be that Yoda and say, you're right. You are the rock star. You are the hero in this scenario. You're doing the absolute right thing for your family. Here's the coverage that you need. Here's the path you need to go down. It's a subtle shift in messaging, but I think it makes a big difference when we're talking about, trying to convert a sale and trying to really connect with people.
Especially when I think, the first time that the world has changed. So we're talking about digital marketing. People aren't meeting you in person now. They're getting to know you or your agency via your website, right? So this is going to be their first experience with you.
Well, right. And there's no shortage of the information either.
Right.
Right. So if they're just looking for the nuts and bolts on, how much life insurance do I need? How many online calculators out there? They could just type in some numbers and get an answer spit out of them.
Yeah.
Right. They can find that information from somewhere. But what they need is somebody they trust. They need that guide that they can put their trust in and know that, their hand's going to be held along the way and that they're going to still come out looking like the hero at the end of the day. It's no different than if you had, a leaky toilet and you had to call the plumber, right? You're the hero. You know the right plumber to call.
Right.
They came and they fixed it, but that's sort of secondary, right? You're the hero because your wife complained about the leaky toilet and now it's fixed.
Right. That's true. I never thought of it that way. You're absolutely right. Yeah. You're like, I got it done, right? It doesn't matter.
Exactly. It doesn't matter how it got done. You knew the right person to call. Yeah.
That's great. I wanted to take a step back too, and just ask you this question I was thinking about as we were discussing it, which is, so for some insurance producers and brokers, digital marketing may be something that is new to them or they're not entirely really familiar with. I think this is why this is so important. I did want to ask you to just explain, why is digital marketing so important today for producers, brokers, really for any business, but let's talk about insurance. Why is digital marketing important? Why is SEO important?
So it's all about getting in front of your target demographic, because if you don't do it, somebody else is going to. The great thing about doing it digitally is that it levels the playing field, right? So you can be on the same platforms and you can make the same amount of noise in your local area, right? So if you're an agency targeting Massachusetts specifically, you can make quite a bit of noise with with a modest budget and compete with folks like the direct writers. Maybe not on a national level, but you can certainly level the playing field to some degree and make sure that you're targeting the right folks. And I think that's the biggest thing that digital gets you at this point. With when we talk about organic search, obviously, the more pages that you have sort of showing up in search results for phrases, the more traffic you're going to get, the more of an information resource you can become. But even more than that, when we're talking about social and sort of really segmenting our networks, you have the same capabilities and the same targeting abilities that businesses 10 times your size do. The benefit is you have the ability to only hone in on and only spend money on people that fit your core demographic. And so once you sort of define what is my brand message and who is my target customer, you can really hone in on them into great detail.
That's dovetails exactly into where I wanted to go, about tailoring your message to the correct audience and platform. So how would I go about doing that?
Yeah, so we sort of touched on it a little bit earlier, right? Where if you've got a post that's about, if you have a piece of content that target audience is intended to be homeowners, well, then that post should go on Facebook or Instagram. And now you can talk about you write like a little summary of the post. You've got a link to it. And now you can target folks individually who live, within a certain mile radius of a specific zip code, who have a certain household income, who have a specific education level that have completed. Are they a family or is it a single person? You can really drill down demographic wise and make sure that post gets in front of the right people. Conversely, if you're doing something that's, a workers' comp related, well, you can get on LinkedIn and target that post to risk advisors, C-level executives, people in specific industries. So you don't have to just do this sort of spray and pray mentality of, I created a bunch of content and we're going to see what sticks. You can sort of, to some degree now, make it stick by getting it in front of the right people with a modest budget.
Thank you. That's great. I wanted to make sure that we also explain to people, I said in the beginning that you're a co-founder of Agency Appeal. I didn't really explain too much about what that is. Can you explain to our listeners, what Agency Appeal is and what you do?
Yeah, so Agency Appeal is a marketing agency, and we're specifically focused on helping independent insurance agencies really define who their brand, who their target market is, and what their brand is, and from everything from what it looks like to how they message, to, we'll go as far as creating all their collateral for them as well. But we're really a branding and marketing agency that's focused on helping the independent insurance agency differentiate themselves in an already really crowded market.
I'm really curious, actually, since you do work with so many people. So my final question for you, which is, what's the biggest mistake that you see that, let's say, most insurance agencies, producers make when it comes to online digital marketing?
Using a really highly templated approach. Now, I'm all for efficiency and I'm all for templates when they make sense. But when it comes to defining your brand and really wanting to stand out, you need to make sure that what you're producing is unique to you and really speaks to your core demographic, right? The audience in Miami is going to be very different from the audience in Boston.
Right.
And so if you're going through a process of, creating messaging or designing a new website, you don't really just want an off-the-shelf solution where it's, the colors look nice, it sort of matches my logo, and it comes preloaded with a bunch of content. Great. While that's a good, sort of quick down and dirty option maybe for some folks, the problem you're going to run into is it's not going to speak to your target demographic. That content was likely written by somebody who didn't take the time to get to know you and didn't take the time to really dive in and figure out what are the pain points of your particular customer base. Right.
Yeah, it's funny.
Without knowing those details.
It reminds me, there was a Saturday Night Live sketch years ago, and it was like generic holiday card. And it had like, hello, friend, coworker, someone, I've known you for some period of time.
We've all had it happen where we get an email that was intended to be personalized.
Right.
And the subject line is, hello, first name.
Right. Yep. I still get
Check out these great insert offers here. Like, well, you made an attempt to personalize it, but not so much.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Eddy DeMelo has been my guest today. He is the co-founder of Agency Appeal. I'm going to send people today to agencyappeal.com. Eddy, thank you so much for joining me and for sharing your words of wisdom. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, want up-to-date insurance information? Visit spotoninsurance.com, where you'll discover an ever-growing library of podcasts, videos, articles, and online tools by professionals for professionals to enhance your insurance education.
Thanks for joining us.